back up. This is not the conversation for you. You know, you belong over there, you know? And it's like, no, because last time I checked, when you go outside, they look at you the same way they look at me. So what are you talking about, right?
I would like you to talk about if those differences with being from two different, you know, being from a different culture, being born in a different culture, and then being here in the United States, do you get kind of having to prove yourself to either side?
So I'm just going to answer it this way. Because we are a dot on the map, right? People do not know about the Virgin Islands. I think more people are becoming aware of it, but for the longest while, people did not know about the U.S. Virgin Islands. Okay, that's just a fact. And so one of the things that they would say to people who are from where I'm from, like the threat to call immigration on us is laughable because they do not understand that we are US citizens. They don't. A lot of people do not know that. So that's why I definitely make sure I have to say that. No, when I am born a US citizen. My mom can put me on the plane and send me to the United States. Like we're free to go back and forth. So that's one. So of course there's the questions of how do you guys get around? Do you guys travel by boat? Like it's just like really wild questions when I first came, right? Now I want to say this as someone who subscribes more to Pan-Africanist philosophy for the time I was 12 years old, maybe. I am aware that a lot of Black Americans have not traveled, have not even acquired a passport, right? And so it is not like a deliberate attempt to insult someone. It's genuinely a lack of information, which some of us are just going to call ignorant. So me using ignorant here is not that it has this negative connotation, like I'm trying to, hit you. It's really ignorance, meaning the lack of knowledge, and that's okay. So I've learned to have patience. I don't necessarily feel out of place. The time that I do feel out of place, however, I've been in a lot of situations where I have to code switch tremendously. And I just want to say something about code switching that people do not get. It hurts. It is painful to do so sometimes, depending on the words you have to use and how you say it, because our language, you're talking about rhythm. And to speak a certain way requires me to change that rhythm. It requires me to shift my tongue in certain ways that I am not comfortable with. So that's why oftentimes when you see people from the Caribbean or anywhere else that have an accent somewhere hidden in there, when we get upset, everything goes out the window. Code switching where we just go for it, right? And then you're like, oh, you have an accent, right? Because anger somehow just tells you, like, turns off that code switch, right? So what I've dealt with though is when people hear my accent, they automatically other me. I didn't know this was a thing. It's now that I'm older adult, I pay more attention to it. What do I mean by that? I have been in conversations around African American struggle within America. When I enter the room or I enter the conversation, there's always going to be one, two, tops three, okay, people who think that I cannot contribute to the conversation because I'm different. Yes. I have experienced that, right? And as someone who subscribes to Pan-Africanism, who is a big fan of Marcus Mosiah Garvey, okay, I actually used to take insult. Now they also have this new movement happening, FBA, Foundation of Black Americans, and ADAS, okay, African Descendants of Slaves. That new movement even created more of that rhetoric around, well, you can't speak in this conversation. And I just want to be clear on this. I agree to a certain extent. You, me, everyone on this panel is considered Black, but all of our Black experience is different. It is different. The issue comes in where we think that difference has to separate us. The issue comes in when we think that difference somehow means that someone is better than the other. That's where I sort of tread cautiously, because that doesn't have to be that way. And to be honest, and I'm just going to be frank because that's just how I am, okay? That idea of othering, therefore I could persecute and dominate you if I can other you, is a very Eurocentric way of thinking. And I'm being honest. Think of colonialism, think of imperialism, right? What has to happen first? We have to first convince our people and everyone else that these people are subhuman, that these people being other are different. Because once I can put you in that category, then I could justify mistreatment. And we as Black people have internalized that. So then you get in a room with the diversity, and it becomes this thing of Caribbean people think they're better than African Americans. African Americans think that African of the continental Africans think that they're better. I would be dishonest to say that people from the Caribbean don't think that way. I would be dishonest to say that. That is not true. The fact is, there are some Caribbean people that come into the United States, and this is where we come in. And you have to check that every time you hear it. Different does not mean inferior. African Americans have a different Black experience than me. And I'm going to land by saying this. The quicker I accepted that, the easier it made building with my African American sisters easier. You get what I'm saying? The quicker I was able to accept that, because here's the reality I had to accept. When you grow up in school and you don't have a white teacher until you reach college, that's a different experience. When you grow up and all your leadership, your elected officials, your politicians, anyone that's in big leadership position looks like you, that matters. It matters. And I never used to think about this. It matters. And to try to minimize that, and then I have to remind people who are not American born in the United States, that are Black, right, and come from countries that are predominantly Black, you already have a head start. You already have a head start on your Black pride, if I must, for lack of a better term. You have a head start because African Americans have had to remain in the place that also enslaved and continue to oppress them, right? And that's not a small task. So for me, yes, I've been in spaces where people try to other me, but knowing Hanifa, Nayela, George for who she is, I do not allow it to happen. When I hear people who are outside of America speak about African American men, women, when men say to me, "Oh, well, you're different," right, and try to speak down an African American woman, I check it. It's not a compliment to me. I check that immediately. And if you are in your family and someone says something, you have to be able to check that. And that's kind of where I come from. Yes, I am othered sometimes, right? Whether directly or indirectly, whether I could tell people are thinking it, I could feel people's energy. I know I'm othered because I have an accent, right? And people automatically think that, and people automatically think that if you from the continent, or you have not struggled as a Black person. And for me, I say to those people, if you think that the illusion of white supremacy is national, then you are crazy. The illusion of white supremacy is global. Everyone, everywhere you go, at the bottom of the totem pole, you have the darker people. Everywhere you go in this world. So to think that your experience somehow, we're going to do the struggle Olympics, okay? That your ancestors struggle more than mine, and yet mine were enslaved too. We were just enslaved on an island. It's crazy to me. And I feel like we have to really not be afraid to engage in those conversations and unpack it, so that we could break down those barriers and we could actually start embracing each other despite our differences.
Thank you, Hanifa. So I just want to touch on what Cece is saying here in the chat. So she said, all true, but I'm of Jamaican descent, and Jamaica was colonized by the British Empire. there are still issues with identity there. Jamaicans can be colorist. So, Colette, can you touch on that?
Yeah, I'm so glad Cece wrote that, because as Hanifa was talking to saying that the back home there, the politicians all, everyone looks like us, right? Which is true. And to be truthful, when I come into this conversation, I was raised here. Like I said, I came here when I was 3 or 4, so practically raised here. So my experience of seeing a Black politician or a police officer that looks like me, or so and so for the teachers, it's the same experience as a Black American that I got visually. However, to add on to that, I was able to travel back home during the summertime so I could see the differences. Now, when Hanifa says you're seeing people that looks like you back home, you don't really think about it. It's true. It's very true. However, our people back home, since we're colonized, and it's like we still have not, and when I say we, I'm talking about Jamaican, right? Not the black American. It's like we still have not honest on the power that we have. Like the way Hanifa says that we have Black politicians, we do not see the power in that back home. Our mindset is still as if we are underneath the British colony, which they say we did get our independence. However, it's still colonized behind the scenes. A lot of things is still run by the Queen, literally. So with that said, we still mentally, and even if you see in some of the laws and some of the things that's going on back home, we still have not honest on the power that we have. That the fact that you do have Black teachers, that the fact that you do have black doctors, people that look just like you, we still have not honest on that power. So when I come to America and I see America, and I'm like, whoa, like if we had the mindset of what Black culture has here in Jamaica, it would be like the revolution of when Haiti got their freedom. What I mean by that is the mindset that we have here in a Black America. There's so much access that Black American has here. There's so much opportunities that when I look back at my country, we don't have. But what we do have is a lot of people that looks like us. So it's kind of like if we combine the two, oh my gosh, what we could do, right? And when I think about that, we both have our struggles. So when Hanifa says we come into a conversation, and once they figure out, for the most part, no one knows that I'm Jamaican. For the most part, only older adults would say, hey, I hear accent, right? They're like, hey, I hear accent. So I could have a conversation, but to be fair to the conversation, I always say I'm Jamaican, because I know off the bat they're going to try to, like Hanifa says, kind of put you in that other, right? But I have to be honest and understand that I was not raised in a Black American household. So my inside the closed doors of my house is a Jamaican household. So our culture, it does have somewhat differences. So I need to embrace that and understand, yes, there is a bit difference, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. So when I do enter in the conversation, I do say, yes, I am Jamaican. It's out front. There it is. However, we're not that much different. And what the fucks kind of said something to it in the comments. He's like, we need to stop focusing on our differences and learn how to build with it. In so much sense, he said it like that. Sorry, what the funk, if I'm paraphrasing. But yeah, you do get in certain conversations where you're trying to add to the conversation, and they're like, in a sense, you know, they don't really say like, up, back up. This is not the conversation for you. You know, you belong over there, you know? And it's like, no, because last time I checked, when you go outside, they look at you the same way they look at me. So what are you talking about? Right? Like, what are you talking about? If you are really trying to build in the conversation and build a better generation, let's say even forget about yourself, but build a better generation for your kids, then let's have solutions and stop trying to focus on what we're different about, because others don't look at us different. The ones that don't look like us don't look at us no different. So we're just fighting with each other for no reason. And at that point, I'm like, you know what? You got it. So that's all I have to say to that.